during that time when you realized that it was okay to feel, that you were given permission to feel, what kind of support system did you have to encourage that?
I had a fantastic support with my friends who had become my family through the years. My friends that I had known from school knew everything that I went through. I had anorexia nervosa in high school. They stuck with me. When I was in high school, I lived with my English teacher and her husband for a period of time because it was no longer safe to remain in my home. And I still had them. My husband was a support system. Our church was a huge support system. So I had people around me that, while they may not have always been blood during that time, they weren't, blood family members. At that moment, I had a huge circle of those who cared for me and knew what I had been through and were supporting me when these emotions came forward.
So they were people that actually allowed you to be different, to be
Yes.
emotional in a safe space and experience that. So you weren't trying to experience that. I often think, and I did this a little of myself, where I was a gatherer of self-help books because I knew that emotion was difficult for me as well. I didn't grow up with permission to feel at all. In fact, I grew up with the permission not to feel, and
Exactly.
not in a cruel way. It was just the culture that I grew up in and that my parents grew up in. But I thought I could gather that on my own through reading books and in the vortex of me. And I love the way that you just described that, because I believe that healing is 90% social and 10% individual. And to be able to be in spaces or to create safe spaces that you can experience something different and feel that loving, almost like what's the word? Like it's okay to be that way. Just that constant, this way is okay too.
Mm-hmm.
And
I knew I had to learn, Kathy, how to love my son in a way that I wasn't loved as a child, but I had wanted to be loved. I knew that I wanted to be able to touch him and love him and kiss and hug and tickle in a very healthy way, so that he always knew every day that if God were to take me and I wasn't going to live to see him to grow up, because I always had that fear that no matter what I did, that I could die at any minute. And I was terrified to go to a doctor because I was afraid of the prognosis. And I will tell you, my son was 3 years old when I stopped going to an oncologist. And I said, you can't tell me anything positive. I don't want to hear from you. I said, if it cannot be positive, I don't want to hear. And I haven't been back to one since then, because again, I fill my mind with positivity. And so I knew I had to look at people around me that were within my circle of ability to glean and to learn from, and to watch them with their families. And I picked individuals that I thought modeled parenting really well. And I watched their relationships and how they interacted with their children, how they interacted with their spouses. And I modeled that. I copied it. I mimicked it until it became natural. And, to this day, we look at one another and we can laugh without even saying a word. And I consider that a blessing, because he and I we'll be on a phone call. He lives in Kentucky, and his dad, my husband, and I live down here in Florida. We'll get on FaceTime and I'll just raise an eyebrow at something that he says, and he'll start laughing. He's like, Mom, don't even say it. And we will just giggle and laugh and crack up because that bond is there. But I had to learn it from somebody I had to surround myself with people that I could model that from.
Gosh, it's such a, it's so rich with that notion that we are here on this earth as one big tribe. There isn't just one model. I remember when my sons went to college and they came home, and I don't know if you had this experience, but my older one, I remember it more clearly, but I had the same experience with my younger one. But he came home and he said, wow, I had a really good childhood. Mom, there's some strange situations out there in the world. And I thought, wow, I had to wait till you were 24. But partly because they were always in this little ball of light. We would expose them to certain things, but it just goes to say that and I say to my friends all the time when they say something about my sons, I say, it does take a village, and I'm grateful that you are part of my village, and that they can go to you if they don't feel comfortable coming to me, that you did have all of these and you put them into place. I would have loved to meet you as a teenager. That tenacity and just drive for that vivaciousness for life and to want more was just so innately a part of you.
It was. It was, and back in the early 80s, that wasn't something that was I don't want to say well respected, well received within my family circle. Women were not valued. Women were not seen to be in those positions. And I knew that life was better. Life was meant to be better. And that I wanted what I was seeing in the world. I was wanting what I was reading about. And Madame Curie is one of my huge role models. I love Madame Curie. And she was so tenacious and she fought so hard for what she believed in. And she was in the trenches and she went against all of the naysayers to go on to win multiple Nobel Prizes because she knew that she could do it. She knew that within her was that ability to do so much more than what people said she could do. And I just, I remember when I was in the hospital with anorexia nervosa, I was there for several months, and I refused to go home. That's how I wound up living with my English teacher. I refused to leave. I said, no, I'm not going. I will not go home because this is what I'm going back to. And they knew what I was going back to. So long story short, through different trials, my teacher called and said, come live with me and my husband. And I said, okay, I'll go home. I'll go to their house because I knew that there was more out there and I wanted it. That's all I can say. I wanted it. I wanted it bad enough to fight for it.
So it is certainly innately part of who you are. And I'm sure you have a lot of people coming to you in kind of a state of learned helplessness. What is the portal that you open for them? What is there one that you feel is one that kind of creates that psychological safety for people to be different? Like how do you help people through that transition of?
I share my story first. I let them know, I was abused as a child. I was sexually abused. I was physically abused. I was psychologically abused. Abuse was there. So I acknowledged that with them. I acknowledged that I had an eating disorder. Because I think when a professional tries to come across as being perfect, we're perfectly failing at that point. Because as somebody once said to me, we are all perfectly flawed. And I loved that statement that he shared because we are all perfectly flawed. When I share my flaws, but then I say, however, I take those flaws and I use them to my advantage. And to use them to my advantage, I have to start small with a baby step. Because when we watch people begin to walk, when we watch babies, if they take a big step, they're going to fall. But if they take a little step, they might teeter and they might lose their balance a little bit, but it's recoverable. And we can pick them up off their bum bums and make the next step. And they're not afraid because it didn't hurt as much. I think of my grandson, who is a year and a half, and when he first learned to walk, he would try and just run, and then he'd fall, and then he'd get angry and he'd quit. He'd have a little fit and he'd be done. And then he figured out little steps, and now there's no stopping him. Well, I share that with my patients. Little steps. Little steps can get us in the end to where we want to be. And then I try to give them hope, and I share my story with them so that they may find that hope and see that if she can do it, who was I? I'm like any other human being on earth, right? Individually, we are not that spectacular. I'm sorry to burst anybody's bubble. We all poo, we all pee, we all need to change our clothes. When we run, we get body odor. We're not that spectacular. But if I could overcome those odds, if I could overcome what I went through, anybody can overcome them. But maybe we just need somebody who's already done it to stand beside it and to remind us it's going to be okay. It's going to hurt. It's going to be messy. There's going to be some tough decisions that we have to make, but they're doable. But it's one little step at a time. Don't make too many big steps. Just make a couple little steps. Take a little step in this direction, take a little step in that direction, and then add to it next week, maybe one more new step.
It really is in the small, right? It's just in those little moments and learning how to really feel what's happening in those moments so that you can use it as a launching pad for a different trajectory. As you talk, I just have this beautiful image of this tenacious child with all this grace and wisdom, because the words that come out to me is compassionate passion.
I like that, Kathy. I'm going to coin that. Thank you. I'm going to borrow that one. I like it.
That is so you. You have such compassion, but when it's combined with this passion of knowing that there is something more, and I think that's what we can bring to other people, is this knowledge and understanding that whatever you've been told, however you've been raised, there is room for something different. And I think the world, I don't know, especially the world of medicine, and I don't want to knock it because you and I are both sitting here today because of it, but I love the idea of, no, I'm not going back to the oncologist because they are trained to find something wrong. I mean, that's why we walk into these institutions, because we feel like something's wrong. Well, they'll find it if they look hard enough. A friend of mine, she'll go to the emergency room. Like the emergency room, their whole protocol is start from the top and just look through you. And I promise you, you go to the emergency room, you will find something wrong with you. But if you start from, and I'm not knocking emergency rooms,
totally understand, right? Medicine has its place, it has its purpose. Like you said, you and I are survivors because of it.
And we have relied too much on the medical system to tell us what we already know. If we just, I mean, our bodies are our best friends. They are with us. They try to talk to us. They often get loud and louder and louder if we're not listening. And that permission to feel and understand that thoughts turn into feelings. I mean, we're all just one sentence away from being somebody different.
Exactly. I was actually reading a book by Zig Ziglar, and maybe it was he or it was another individual that had said that we are one thought away,
Mm-hmm.
just one thought away from making a decision that later we're going to have to deal with the consequences of. And it is just that we're one thought. And so I guard my thoughts so strongly with positivity. Because if I allow myself to take that path of negativity, what's going to be that one thought that's going to take me back to an eating disorder? What's that one thought that's going to take me back to being a chronic worrier? That one thought of taking me back to the perfectionist syndrome, which was, did not help at all contribute my cancer. My oncologist, I told her she was an amazing woman, but she was very clear with me. And she said, your A-type personality has contributed to your cancer. You are doing yourself favors. So am I one thought away to going back there? We are one thought away.
Yeah, it's astonishing when you think about that. And because I know that, I'm much more aware. And I think self-awareness has really kind of, I don't know if it ever was, but now we're at a point where we have access, we have information, we have tools. And I say that we have it. And I know that I am a white privileged female. I understand that. And I hope to expand the world of access to everybody who needs assistance. But
you have frozen at the moment, Kathy.
oh, you have too. Dang. Let me see. There you are.
Yes, there you are. I was just typing, we froze up for a moment.
That's okay. I love this technology. Uh, so having
I know it's,
access.
go ahead.
Yeah, having access is an advantage. I understand that, but there's also feeding the right wolves. I'm sure you've heard that
Yes,
what
yes.
wolf you feed is the one that's going to grow. And knowing that there's an alternative, but there's something about the self-awareness. So if you were talking to a client, what is a tool that you help guide people to open up that self?
So helping people with nutrition often, remember, it all goes back to nutrition, but it starts with what we think. We forget how we feel hunger. We forget to eat because we don't feel hungry, or all I feel is hungry. And so I help them to kind of live in the moment, intuitive eating, looking at the food and enjoying it. So, for example, if there's somebody who struggles with overeating, and let's just have one piece of your favorite something, but let's enjoy it. And so I take them through the steps of the pleasure of that piece of food. And I help them to begin to explore hunger again, to begin to listen to their body when we have hormones in our gut called ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is our hunger hormone. It growls and we're hungry. And leptin is the sense of satiety and fullness. But when we are emotionally full, we can't feel those anymore. We don't feel those hormones. We don't feel that sense of fullness. So I help them to just begin to recognize the sense of hunger, to recognize the sense of fullness, depending upon where this client is. And that's where I want them to start, and to understand that at the moment I'm not hungry because I'm so frustrated. I am so annoyed, or I'm so sad that all I can feel is sad because I'm too full with anything else. And the minute that they can journal and recognize I didn't eat today because I was really sad, is the minute that they can start making that connection.
Mm.
So through journaling, which is a small step, because maybe they've never journaled their feelings before, and make that connection between what I'm feeling and what I'm eating. And for you and I, it's a small thing to journal. But for somebody who's never journaled their emotions, they're putting what they're feeling to paper. And that's powerful. That's powerful when we can recognize that now I have to acknowledge this. Then that has some power behind it. So that's where I start.
Brilliant. And that speaks to me. The writing, which I had always come easy to me as a child, but I love that you highlighted we have negative emotions, and this isn't about positive. We're not. You and I are not all rainbows and unicorns.
Exactly. I'm looking for a plug, so I'm just gonna pop
No
down
worries.
real quick. Okay, I found one. Keep talking. I'm good.
So, because I often have people say to me, well, I want to be positive like you. And I have to say, I am not positive all of the time. I have come to believe and embrace the fact that we are all of it. We are positive, we are negative. All of these emotions play a very important role. The negative emotions, when they come up, guilt says, whoa, sweetie, you are now in danger of moving away from your moral compass. So to say, I'm not going to feel guilt, or I'm not going to feel sad, sadness says, wait a minute, can we hang out here for a little bit? We have something to process. And so jumping from I'm sad to say, okay, I have to have a positive thought. Gosh, that's not doing us, that's stuffing it again. So to be able to say, I'm sad and why, and let that feeling come out from our heart through the pen to say, I'm sad because food has always meant love to me. And I need to feel love, or whatever that is. And once you understand it, I was having a really hard time through COVID with food. With food and alcohol, to be honest with you. It started with alcohol. I live by myself. I've always had wine. Wine was a big part of my marriage. Alcohol was a very big part of my ex-husband's life. And so it was a learned behavior. I grew up with no alcohol because my grandfather was an alcoholic. So my parents never had it. And through COVID, there were nights when I thought, I have a puppy, and I would say, Bodhi, did you drink the rest of that? Because I could not have drank that entire bottle until I got up to go take him for a walk. And I realized, yeah, I've been overserved by myself. And so I started really acknowledging, why am I having, what is this thing with alcohol? And it was encompassed with loneliness. And that feeling of the loneliness would come and I would reach for the alcohol. And that, frankly, was how my marriage was. It was a lonely marriage. So we both reached for the alcohol. So then I got rid of the alcohol and I realized, oh, I'm just replacing it with food. So I was very mindlessly eating. And as soon as I would feel uncomfortable, I would go and, whatever I was eating, whatever was in the closet. But it became a huge hindrance to what I was trying to do, because I was trying to create this course on emotions, oddly enough. And every time I would get to a sticky point, I'd decide, oh, right now is the moment to get up and make myself a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese and eat the whole box. And I would sit there and think, what am I doing? What is it that I'm so afraid of, or that I'm coming up against? And I think it was the vulnerability, me exposing myself through emotions that I never was able to do most of my life. And now it was coming out in this work that I was learning. But what I didn't have is what you so brilliantly highlighted was I was doing it in the vacuum of me, and that was not working.
Because if you knew how to do it, you wouldn't be in that position in the first place. If you already knew the tools that you needed to know, you wouldn't have eaten the whole box of Kraft macaroni and cheese. And so the first step is to acknowledge what we're doing. And I can't acknowledge what I'm doing until I recognize what I'm doing. So by journaling, it helps me to recognize my feelings, and then I validate them. You know what? I feel this way because I am lonely. I am drinking this wine because I feel lonely at the moment. And now that I know why I'm doing it, now I can find a way to replace it with something else. But it's a process, and I can't go from A to C. I have to have B. So I start with A, and then the B is, oh, I'm lonely. That's why I'm drinking the wine. I'm lonely. I wasn't making that connection before. So now, what can I do so that I'm not lonely? But people don't, we're not taught that. That's not something that's taught in school, and it's not something that's taught in most homes. And so unless somebody comes along and is willing to be vulnerable and to say, you know what, I can help get you to see, but we've got to do B first. We don't learn that.
Yeah, and I was trying to do it on my own, and thank God I have so many beautiful co-pilots that I fly with that I can reach out and say, hey, I think I'm having a problem with this. And just having the ability to hear myself tell the story, because I was journaling, but then having it mirrored back by another human and them helping guide me to say, okay, what could you do in those moments of loneliness? You've already reached out for help, but what could you do in those moments that would be life-giving instead of life-taking?
I love it.
And so I usually exercise in the morning. I started exercising in the afternoons because I didn't drink during the day. It was after that. It was at 5 o'clock hour.
Mm-hmm.
And so 5 o'clock, I would do my yoga class or take Pilates, where before it was always 7 o'clock in the morning. So I started shifting it.
I love it. I love it. So you found a solution. And I love the fact that you allowed somebody to mirror back to you. That you gave yourself that freedom to hear it and to receive it, because that's hard. That can be really hard when we allow somebody the permission to be honest with what they're hearing. So kudos to you, because that's a hard thing to do, Kathy.
Thank you for that. And I'm so grateful for the circles that I swim in now, because I don't think I could have done that with my ground crew. In fact, I know I couldn't. They were part of the problem, because we were getting on Zoom calls and it was bring your wine, here's some wine, or Kathy, I sent you a case of wine, those circles weren't helping me. And so I realized I have other options. I have these beautiful people that I've met in positive psychology, all of these people that know me in a different light. They're not saying, okay, get out the bottle. Let's have a cocktail and chat. They're saying, hey, I know you to be this beautiful, bright light. How can I help you? How can I support you in maintaining that? Not let's get trash together,
Exactly. They know the beauty that you have and what you offer, and they want to help you to continue to be that best person.
Yeah, so it's similar to what you were expressing as a child, that you found these other places where you could experience something different and let that soak in and transfer to your own child.
Those circles that we surround ourselves with are so intrinsically valuable. We cannot change our family circle when we're children. We live in the household that we live in, but the friends that we choose. And as we grow that circle of influence that we allow ourselves to be in, we gain more and more control over. And surrounding ourselves with positive people that push, for me, I wanted to be pushed to be a better person. I wanted to be pushed intellectually. I wanted to prove to people that I was smarter than I was given credit for. I wanted to prove to my family that I was more intelligent than they gave any woman in our family credit for. I'm happy to say I graduated summa cum laude. I graduated with a 3.97. Not that I still keep track. But we surround ourselves with those that challenge us and make us want to be better people, and they help us get there.
Yeah, there's so much power in the people that we hang around with. There's so much research in that it makes me dizzy when I meet people that say, gosh, how do you put yourself out there? I have the same group of friends that I've had since I was in kindergarten, and I think, how do you grow in that?
I was just going to ask that. How do you keep growing?
Yeah, and I feel sad for people that hold themselves there, because there's just so much more when you're able to say yes and hear these beautiful stories of humans that have experienced. I have a friend that said to me, I don't think there is a heaven and hell that's like some place that we're going. I think we're in it right now, that there are moments here on earth that we are in hell, and there are moments here on earth that we are in heaven. And the more we can experience and understand that those two worlds exist, and we can constantly move in and out of them just with our own body and our own mind and our own spirit. And like you said, the problem happens when we hang out in one of those places. Hanging out in...
Yeah, we have to choose to remove ourselves from somewhere that is continually negative, that is continually harmful. And it's the choice to turn a negative to a positive, and then to get ourselves out.
Yes. Can you see me? I think you just froze.
Yep, I'm hearing you come back.
Oh, there
okay, there I see you. But you froze again.
Yeah, that brings us full circle, because that is the post-traumatic growth model. The model is that those Oh, did I lose you? Yeah, you look so pretty frozen. When I freeze...
Oh, there you are.
There I said, you look so pretty frozen. When I freeze, it's usually not a good freeze. But so post-traumatic growth, the original guys that coined that phrase, their research basically is saying that through those different elements are ways that we are able to actually reframe our story in a positive light, and use it as a catalyst to something better. And I think, we all have hell on earth. Everybody does. There's different forms of it. I struggle a lot when somebody says, oh, but did you really experience trauma? Because trauma is like 9/11. And yes, trauma is 9/11, and trauma is maybe watching a terrible movie. There's different elements of trauma and how the perfect collision happens in our own brains. And like you said, where we are nutritionally on all levels, on that mind, body, spirit level, when we're exposed to the trauma. If our system is down, then an experience, you and I could be in the same environment. If my system is down and yours is not, we are likely to have two very different versions, even you experiencing the exact same thing. So So it really is about reframing the story and using it. And you do it so beautifully to offer this pathway of hope for humans that are experiencing anything that is difficult.
Well, thank you. That's my passion, is just to help inspire people to not give up, to know that there is something beautiful on the other side. And just, dreams are great. Dreams are awesome, and we have to have them to aspire to. So let's aspire to them. Let's get to those. Don't give up on them. Don't give up on ourselves.
Ah, so beautiful. This time is so special for me. I often ask this question, which I sent to you before, so you got to think about it. But the question is, if I were to crush you up and put you in a pill, what effect would you have on somebody that took it?
That as a pill, as a medication that's going up into their blood, they would be restored with self-belief, with self-empowerment, that they would be just it would be internal, it would be intrinsic, it would just fill them from their core in all of their organs, and that they would just have that ability to inspire themselves and to know that they've got
it. I think I just took one of those. This time with you has just been really, really special. I can't wait to have more discussions with you. I think your story is just remarkable. And again, it's just so full of hope. I want to share it with the world because we need more people like you.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I would love to come on any time that you would like to have me. And as I have shared with you, I would be honored to have you on my YouTube channel and to just to continue our conversation and just to share what you do, because I believe in what the message that you share and that you give is so important. And just that we share that like-mindedness of positive healing. And I think that the world needs more people to share that message of positive hope and positive healing, and what we choose to take from an experience, how we choose to look at an experience molds and shapes and changes our mind thoughts that we then share to the next generation. So I am absolutely looking forward to having you onto my YouTube channel very soon, and just keep this dialogue flowing.
Yes, that would be pure joy for me. And as you were talking, I'm thinking it's exactly what she said at the beginning. It's what we're taking into our body. And when we start taking in that new story of potential and restoration and inspiration, it just changes everything. Thank you for sharing your genius with me.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone listening. This has just been a fantastic experience, and I look forward to many more with you for sure.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, Kathy.